So I just got out of the theater. I saw that movie Obsession. Holy shit. That was one of the scariest movies I've ever seen. And not even for the sheer horror, which it has plenty of, but for how close this movie hits to home, and I'm sure many people can relate to that. Have you ever been in a relationship with someone who is just out of their mind, and no matter what you do to try to hone them in, it just makes it worse? And I'm swearing off relationships for a while. This movie scared me straight. I've already been divorced twice, so obviously I'm not good at this stuff. And this movie just reminded me to just stay the course, lay low. And this is a movie I would not recommend you take your significant other with on a date night. This is not a date night movie. This movie's like a bad acid trip. A cautionary tale. Be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it. And I have a feeling I'm gonna have some terrible dreams tonight. And what's funny is this movie is exactly like these two Tales from the Crypt episodes that have the same premise. Till Death and Loved to Death, where the protagonist makes a wish to make a person fall in love with them and it completely backfires on them. So I'm going to go through the whole story and break down how Bear could have completely avoided this and got the girl, and life would have been great. Or relatively great. Life is pretty meaningless, but I digress. So now we're going to get into the plot of the movie. And if you don't want spoilers, I suggest you close your virgin ears now. But leave the video playing, otherwise you're gonna fuck up my watch hours. So the movie starts out with this guy named Bear, and his friend Ian is giving him advice to ask this girl Nikki out. At first it feels like a friendly gesture, and he does seem like he's trying to help, but the advice is terrible. He tells Bear to call her a nickname she hates, Freaky Nikki, almost like he's setting him up for failure. Because he is. Later it's revealed that Ian is the one secretly hooking up with Nikki behind the scenes, and it becomes clear that their relationship isn't emotional for her, it's purely physical. And maybe Ian's actually the one more emotionally attached to Nikki, and she's already starting to pull away. He acts weirdly controlling about how Bear should approach her, almost like he's trying to steer the entire situation off course. Ian even makes a point of telling Bear not to ask her out during trivia night, possibly less to protect Bear from rejection and more to spare himself from the humiliation. Then Bear gets home and finds his cat dead on the floor, overdosed on oxycodone that belonged to his dead grandma, the one who left him this house. And come on, pills have child-proof lids. You're telling me a cat opened the medicine cabinet, cracked open a child-proof oxy bottle, and got high? I'm convinced this wasn't the cat's first rodeo. That cat was probably partying with the grandma for years. The cat knew exactly what it was doing and just took it too far. Maybe the cat wanted to reunite with the grandma and keep partying together in heaven. Honestly, there's probably a prequel in there somewhere. Obsession, Cat Session, from the cat's perspective. But that night Bear is supposed to finally ask Nikki out, but he has to cancel because obviously his cat just died. But he doesn't have the spine to actually explain the situation to her. And that becomes the core problem of this entire movie, his inability to communicate honestly. He never tells Nikki why he canceled, so to her, it just seems like whatever he's doing matters more than she does. And Nikki reveals she's putting in her 2 weeks at work. They all work together at the same store. Bear, Nikki, Ian, and Sarah. And on first watch, it seems random, but on the second viewing it becomes obvious that she's leaving because of Ian. Their secret relationship is becoming messy, in one way or the other. Either it's emotionally messy, or there's a lack of an emotional connection, and she wants out. And on the way to the bar, Bear stops at a crystal shop to replace a necklace that Nikki said she lost. And while he's there, he notices this One Wish Willow stick. Basically a novelty item that's not supposed to actually work, but he's desperate enough to try anything. And the lady at the counter is jaded and sarcastic, warning him not to come back complaining if it fails. And she mockingly mentions that some people die after using it or wish they were dead, but he just brushes it off. And at trivia night, Ian's practically trying to abort the entire mission. He wants Bear to back off. You can tell he's wrestling with guilt and probably wants to tell him the truth, but he knows it would destroy him. So instead, he throws out vague hints that Bear completely misses. Cause guys are weird like that. When you hook up with a hot girl, part of you wants to scream it from the mountaintop. But when your best friend is hopelessly in love with her, you can't say anything without ruining his life. It's the ultimate win-lose situation. And a lot of us have been in that position before, on one end or the other. Shit, I've been on both. It sucks either way. And the thing is, Ian doesn't even know what his own endgame is. He's stuck in the same uncertainty as Bear, just on the opposite side. Nikki basically holds both of their emotional fates in her hands. Bear and Nikki go to the bar and order drinks. Bear gets a pina colada because he doesn't really drink, which is an immediate disaster. Every chance he gets, he hands more power over to Nikki. The best advice for young men is honestly this: if you like a girl, stay cool. Be engaged, be polite, be confident, but don't overdo it. Less is more. That whole monologue that Bear had in the beginning that he was practicing on the waitress, don't do that. Don't overshare. Girls like hearing nice sappy things, but a little bit at a time. If you throw everything at once at her, it's gonna give her a sensory overload and immediately turn her off. And Nikki calling him feminine over the drink choice completely crushes his confidence. And this is where the movie gets interesting, because modern culture loves to throw around terms like toxic masculinity, red pill, all these buzzwords whenever men talk about confidence or assertiveness. But this movie basically argues the opposite extreme is equally destructive. So you gotta find the middle ground. Bear spent his whole life internalizing fear, insecurity, and self-loathing. He's terrified of saying the wrong thing, terrified of being honest. Sometimes in life, you gotta give less of a fuck. People are gonna judge you. They're gonna think you're weird either way. Fuck them. You do you. Be happy. And that will naturally attract the people you want around you. Even making these videos, you know how much hate YouTubers get in the comments from their family, from their friends? Everyone shits on them. But giving less of a fuck is what creates winners. They're not worried about what other people think. They're worried about their own goals. And that's how one becomes successful in life. And if Bear had a little bit of self-confidence, none of this would have happened. Nikki's life wouldn't have been destroyed. His inability to act honestly creates resentment, opportunism, and eventually horror. Every time he tries to speak honestly, somebody interrupts him, especially Ian, who's intentionally trying to cock block and sabotage the moment, because he's worried he's losing his grip on Nikki. But it's already been lost. Then during the shots, Bear memorializes his dead cat Sandy, and Sarah's the only one who genuinely notices or cares, which immediately establishes this weird emotional geometry of the movie. Everyone's in love with somebody who wants somebody else. Bear loves Nikki, but Nikki just wants an emotional connection. Ian wants Nikki, but doesn't have the emotional intelligence to stimulate her mind. And Sarah quietly wants Bear, and nobody wins. He loves her, she loves this guy right here. She loves somebody else. You just can't win. And honestly, Sarah's the calmer option anyways. Less chaos, less emotional baggage, less competition. Nikki gets 2,000 likes on every Instagram post. Attention becomes addictive at that point. Sarah's low-key but still hot, and she's peaceful. So for that alone, Sarah wins Baddie of the Week. So eventually Nikki wants to go home and instinctively looks towards Ian because, despite everything, there's still an understanding between them. But Bear suddenly steps up and offers to drive her instead. She's surprised but accepts. And this is important. Bear is barely even on Nikki's romantic radar at this point. But she's spending the whole night emotionally drifting away from Ian. And you can see Ian realizing it too through his body language. And during the drive, Nikki opens up emotionally. She talks about wanting a big life change. She wants to be a writer. She wants to feel loved. She speaks indirectly because she doesn't know how to clearly say she's emotionally unsatisfied with Ian. Then she says something really important. Her book's a love story, not romance. Bear asks, "Isn't that the same thing?" And she pauses for a second before deciding, no, it's not. To her, romance is physical. Love is emotional and spiritual. That's the entire problem with Ian. She tells Bear he's the only person she feels comfortable being herself around. And that's her throwing him a massive opening. She even mentions Sarah asking about him, subtly trying to figure out who he really likes. And the ball is completely in Bear's court now, and he fumbles it catastrophically. And instead of being honest, he uses the awful Freaky Nikki nickname Ian gave him earlier, instantly killing the mood. And Nikki has had enough at this point. She's sick of him being indirect, constantly fumbling. She's ready to rip the Band-Aid off. She walks up to him and directly asks him, "Do you like me?" As an adult, that question should not even be scary. Any confident guy would say yes. Women want confidence and honesty, more than some perfect rehearsed line. Then Nikki practically begs him, "If you like me, tell me now." Because she's about to make some serious decisions that could involve Bear in her future or not. She's gonna leave that job, she's gonna leave Ian, and if Bear wants to come along, he better speak now or forever hold his peace. And this is the crossroad where the entire movie could have changed, and Bear panics. "I think we're good friends." Nikki sighs with both relief and disappointment at the same time. For one brief second, she probably would have chosen him willingly if he'd just been honest. But then she walks away, and Bear, knowing he fucked up, uses his One Wish Willow, wishing for her to love him more than anyone else in the world. And the horrifying part is how it instantly works, and there's no buildup. Immediately she turns around obsessed with him. But the movie makes it clear this isn't the real Nikki anymore. Something else has attached itself to the wish. The entity loves Bear, not Nikki herself. And the actress absolutely kills this performance. The personality switch happens instantly, like a light turning on. She suddenly tries getting Bear to come inside, mentions losing her cat, then glitches because Bear was the one whose cat died. It's like the entity is malfunctioning while trying to mimic human emotion. And there's one thing I notice. Every time she's confronted with reality, she malfunctions a little bit. And then always snaps out of her spell for about 2 seconds. The real Nikki comes back every time the entity malfunctions. It seems like during that space of uncertainty, that's Nikki's chance to fight back and come back to life. But she isn't powerful enough to do it for long because she immediately snaps back into the entity. And the entity is like a robot that is completely fixated on Bear. She just wants him completely. But it doesn't even feel romantic or natural. It feels possessive, like the entity only understands obsession, not love. Bear lets her come home with him, and at that point, she's basically moved in permanently. And from then on, she's constantly framed in shadows, like the darkness itself is puppeteering her. And you can tell the director got inspired by the movie Pulse, because there's a ghost in the shadows that makes weird herky-jerky movements, goes back and forth, just like Nikki does throughout the movie. And Nikki is constantly over-apologizing because she's terrified of rejection. And the power dynamic completely flips. She becomes impossibly clingy, unable to spend a second away from him. And Bear is completely freaked out at this point. He decides to sleep on the floor instead of next to her. And when he wakes up in the morning, he sees she created an entire memorial shrine to his dead cat. And she thinks she's comforting him. She wants to please him, but fundamentally doesn't understand human boundaries or grief. And at work, Ian starts interrogating Bear, pretending not to care, while obviously caring way too much. He's panicking because the situation spiraled completely beyond his control. And that night, Nikki decides to get taken home by Ian. And I would imagine during the drive, the conversation they had, Ian tricked her into thinking she was on Molly last night. And that's why she was acting out of character. And then Nikki pops up at Bear's doorstep to apologize for her bizarre behavior, which conveniently gives her a reason to keep returning to Bear's house. Then in a calm and vulnerable moment, she confesses her feelings for him and asks if he feels the same. And this time, Bear finally says yes. But now it's meaningless because he knows the wish caused it all. The entity did all the emotional labor for him. He didn't earn any of it. For a brief stretch, they seem happy together, and Ian becomes a full-time hater, furious because he assumed Nikki would eventually reject Bear and crawl back to him. Instead, Bear is living Ian's fantasy while Ian stands in the corner, emotionally cucked by his own bad decisions. So Ian goes in full detective mode, trying to expose Nikki's lies. Sarah joins the resentment too, because she quietly wanted Bear herself. Everyone becomes a hater. But the relationship only works during the honeymoon phase. Eventually the cracks appear. And it's not even a real honeymoon phase. That would imply that both people are actually willing participants, because Nikki's just a robot that's on the behaving setting right now. But that's just a bait and switch. So while Bear and Nikki are out to dinner, Ian calls Bear and reveals Nikki's been lying about her dad dying. And Nikki's been using that as a way to get in with Bear for sympathy points. And it's been working up to this point. And on first watch, My initial reaction was, why the hell does Ian care so much? As soon as Bear gets the girl, Ian shits all over it. What the fuck's his problem? I didn't know at the time he's been banging her beforehand. And now it makes sense, cause he's jealous as fuck. And let's stop right there. Nikki is a solid 9, perhaps a 10. She's gorgeous. There's no question about it. What the fuck is she doing with these two jabronis? This chick gets 2,000 likes on every picture on Instagram. I'm sure she's got some Saudi sheik waiting to fly her out to Dubai. Why is she fucking with these guitar salesmen? They must live in bumfuck Iowa somewhere. Cause if these scrubs can get a girl like that, damn, I need to move there. But Nikki and Bear's perfect fantasy starts collapsing. Nikki starts malfunctioning more violently, creating scenes in public and desperately trying to redirect Bear's attention back onto her. So he relents just to calm her ass down. And you know we've all been there before. Anyone that's ever pissed off their girl in public knows this one very well. You'll say anything to quiet her. And when they get home, they have sex, but there's something deeply wrong about her expression. She's got this blank stare and pretending to simulate pleasure, but it's robotic and hollow. And they don't even make eye contact. And that's the first red flag. I don't know, I'm just one of them guys that likes eye contact. I think it's fucking weird if you're gonna be banging your girl and you don't even look at her. But that just goes to show what a jabroni Bear is to begin with. Listen, there's so many things he could have done to not even be in this situation. Sometimes in life you gotta upgrade things about yourself. And instead of Bear using black magic to get the girl of his dreams, maybe he should have looked inward, made himself a more desirable guy, and actually tried. Even if he fails with Nikki, the lessons he learns, he can use going forward and eventually attract the right girl for him. But this dude's such a pussy and a lazy fuck, he'd rather take the easy road. But there's no free lunches in life, dude. Anything you want in life, you have to work for. Nothing's given to you. This ain't no fucking charity. And that's the whole problem with this. I see videos talking about how Bear's the good guy, Bear's the bad guy. Bear's a bitch-ass motherfucker, let me tell you that. That guy's a punk, fuck him. Cause in life you gotta have game if you want the girl. And if you don't have the game, fall on your fucking face. Fail forward and use those mistakes as a lesson. Eventually it'll work, you just gotta keep trying. But instead, he wants to ruin this poor girl's life, have a demon possess her, and he thinks he's the shit. But fuck him. Then in the middle of the night, Bear wakes up to find that she's standing in the corner of the room watching him sleep. On some paranormal activity pulse kind of shit. Nikki says she hates dreaming because that's the only time her real consciousness returns while the entity sleeps. The real Nikki and the entity are in direct conflict. And then she says one of the most painfully relatable lines in the movie. I feel like you don't love me as much as I love you. Everyone understands that feeling, that imbalance, that helplessness. It's like the roles have been completely switched. But Nikki still remains sympathetic through the entire movie because she didn't ask for any of this. She's just collateral damage in Bear's selfish fantasy. And then one of the most disturbing moments happens, which is a sign of things to come. She walks to the bed holding a vase against her face, implying she might bash it on herself. It's the only way she can reclaim control over her own body from the entity and to get Bear's full attention. And Bear's starting to get more freaked out. She cuts his hair while he sleeps. And instead of honestly confronting problems or growing emotionally, she hides behind fake smiles, seduction, and performative action. Everything becomes imitation instead of genuine connection. Bear finally tries to have an honest conversation with Nikki about staring at him while he sleeps. He tells her it genuinely freaks him out and he asks her to stop. She immediately promises she won't do it again. But here's the problem. Nikki, or whatever is possessing Nikki, can't process criticism in a healthy way. She doesn't see Bear as flawed or human. In her mind, everything he says is correct. So if Bear dislikes something she does, she internalizes it completely. Instead of thinking, maybe we just have boundary issues, she immediately concludes that she's wrong, she's broken, she deserves punishment. Every criticism becomes self-hatred. And then the movie hits its creepiest moment so far. Bear goes to leave the house and the entire front door is taped shut. That's psychotic behavior. But Bear doesn't have the backbone to break up with her. He's terrified of the consequences, terrified of confrontation. So instead of ending things, he just adapts to the insanity and keeps going. And as he leaves, Nikki gives him this fake robotic smile. Everyone's met someone who smiles exactly like this. Technically they're smiling, but there's absolutely no warmth behind it. Underneath the expression is pain, resentment. And as the possession worsens, she starts to glitch more. She's urinating on the floor, which is a direct callback to The Exorcist, and Reagan's loss of bodily control in that film. And the movie makes an important connection here. The self-harm, the humiliation, the urinating, it's all tied to rejection and criticism. Whenever Bear disapproves of her behavior, her body subconsciously retaliates against itself. The entity doesn't know how to regulate emotion, so every negative feeling turns inward into punishment. Then Bear gets to work and opens his lunchbox. Inside are pictures of Bear that Nikki secretly took of him. One seems like a surveillance kind of picture, and one is while he's asleep, and she has the caption, "Not me," which is a little bit strange. Does that mean she doesn't recognize Nikki as herself, or herself as Nikki? Fuck, I don't know. That's already odd, but what completely takes his mind off the pictures is she fed him his own dead cat. And the horrifying part is Nikki genuinely thinks she's doing something loving. She's completely lost the ability to understand human morality or disgust. In her mind, she's nurturing him, taking care of him, giving him something emotionally meaningful, his cat, who he loves. Or it could mean she resents everything that he loves that's not her, so she wants to mutilate it. And meanwhile, Sarah's becoming increasingly suspicious of Nikki and starts questioning Bear about what's going on. Unlike the entity possessing Nikki, Sarah's feelings for Bear are genuine. Her concerns come from actual care, not supernatural possession. Nikki's love is an artificial emotional state being forced into existence. Sarah invites Bear to Ian's party, but Ian tells Bear he can't bring Nikki. It's clearly an attempt to create distance between them and give Bear room to think while also sparing Ian's embarrassment. And Ian confronts Bear on the drive home, but the conversation's complicated because Ian is half telling the truth and half manipulating Bear. He accuses Bear of taking advantage of Nikki, which is technically true in theory because Bear knowingly used the wish, but in practice, Bear's the one increasingly trapped by the situation. And the problem is Ian's argument is contaminated by jealousy and insecurity. Part of him might genuinely care for Nikki, and part of him might genuinely fear for Bear. But the other part is clearly furious that Nikki chose Bear over him, while he's still hiding the biggest truth of all, his past relationship with Nikki. So that makes him guilty too. Because none of the men in this movie can communicate honestly. Everyone hides things. They avoid confrontation. They let resentment simmer until it mutates into something destructive. Which is why Nikki's original instinct to quit the job and leave them all behind was the smartest decision anyone made in this movie. She should have gotten away from all these motherfuckers. She was obviously too good for any of them. Besides Sarah. Sarah's pretty chill. And when Bear pulls into his driveway, he calls the hotline number for the One Wish company because he finally wants answers about what this thing actually is. And when the operator answers, it's total apathy, like this is routine for them. And the operator asks if Bear wants to cancel his wish. And he says no, he just wants to alter it. He doesn't want to free Nikki from the demon controlling her. He doesn't want to undo the damage he caused. He just wants to modify the wish. He wants better conditions, where it benefits him more. But his insecurity and weakness already destroyed the real Nikki. But now that he finally understands the consequences, he still refuses to let her go. He wants all the benefits of her obsession without accepting the responsibility for what it's doing to her. And the operator tells him the only way to break the spell is death. Either Bear dies or Nikki dies. And you know what Bear is thinking. He ain't fucking dying. She's gonna die. Like the cocksucker he is. But how does the operator know who Bear is? Or how is Nikki screaming on the other end of the phone? And what's actually happening here? The strongest interpretation is that the phone call is literally supernatural, not a hallucination. The operator appears to be part of whatever evil force powers the wish system itself. And Nikki screaming on the phone is the movie revealing that the obsessed girlfriend version of Nikki is artificial, while the real Nikki is psychologically trapped underneath the possession. Kind of like in the movie Exorcist, when Reagan's possessed, inside her body, the real Reagan is scratching "help me." So Bear realizes he's in a world of shit, but in his mind, he'd rather just throw a blanket over the problem and act like it doesn't exist. And when he gets home, Nikki's standing there by the door like a dog waiting for its owner. She's covered in filth, her own bodily fluids. It's like she never leaves her post. She doesn't even use the restroom. But as soon as she sees him, she lights up with happiness. But his reaction is horror, which devastates her. Once again, she internalizes the rejection and puts blame entirely onto herself, which deepens the self-hatred growing inside of her. Then she forces Bear to take her to Ian's party. That's supposed to be boys only, but Sarah was the one that invited Nikki, so she's already aware of it. So they pull up to Ian's boys' night party, and half the people there are women. So it's obvious they don't want Nikki there. And during a game of Jenga, when it's Nikki's turn, rather than playing the game, she pulls out a poem she wrote for Bear and starts reading it in front of everyone. It's this crazy Hansel and Gretel poem about incest, and she's comparing herself and Bear to this fairy tale, and it has really graphic, disturbing incest imagery, and she relates it directly to Bear. And the room is dead silent. She's completely alienated the rest of the room. And then it's Bear's turn to pull a Jenga block, and it instructs him to kiss the person on his left, which happens to be Sarah. And that's absolutely not happening on Nikki's watch. She forcefully pulls Sarah's chair away, inserts herself into the situation, and kisses Bear and says, "No one on this earth will ever comprehend what it feels like to love someone as much as I love you." And within the context of the movie, it's weirdly sweet, but also terrifying as hell, because the intensity of that love isn't human anymore. And Ian finally confronts Nikki directly and asks if she's okay. And the second reality enters the conversation, Nikki completely malfunctions. And this is one of the most important moments in the movie, because she starts screaming, "It's not me, it's not me." And it becomes obvious that whenever Nikki glitches, that's the actual real Nikki fighting back against the entity. Confusion appears to weaken the demon. The more unstable the situation becomes, the more opportunities the real Nikki has to surface. And Nikki begins stabbing herself in the face with broken glass. And this could be an attempt to regain control over the entity herself, but also self-mutilation is the possessed Nikki's way of bringing the attention back to herself. But in any normal world, this would immediately result in a psychiatric hospitalization, which makes the next part feel surreal. Bear takes her to the ER, and they basically refuse to treat her obvious facial wounds. That absolutely makes no sense. No emergency room on Earth would turn away a young woman actively bleeding from facial injuries. Which raises another possibility. Is the movie slipping into hallucination territory? Are we seeing reality distorted through Bear's increasingly fractured perception? Because the hospital scene feels fundamentally unreal. But even after mutilating herself, Nikki's biggest concern still isn't her injuries. She's upset because she disappointed Bear. And she's more worried about Sarah liking him than the fact that she just ruined the entire night and stabbed herself in the face. And Bear finally asks her, does the real Nikki actually like him? Not the entity, not the obsession, the real Nikki. And she replies, yeah, I'm your Freaky Nikki. And the line basically confirms there are two identities, the real Nikki and the Freaky Nikki. And Freaky Nikki is essentially its own entity. Bear's trying to explain that what she's feeling isn't real love, and he's finally beginning to understand that himself. But Freaky Nikki can't comprehend the concept. She only exists to love him. That's her entire purpose. So when Bear starts trying to create emotional distance, it has the opposite effect. She becomes more dependent, more clingy, more self-destructive, because she can feel him slipping away from her. And that's her greatest fear. The more Bear withdraws, the more terrifying she becomes. And in the middle of the night, while Freaky Nikki is asleep, the real Nikki wakes up and begs Bear to kill her. But he only perceives this from a selfish, egotistical perspective. He asks, is it really so bad to be with me? He isn't even empathizing with the torture she's experiencing. And this has nothing to do with her feelings for him. She's literally under captivity by demons, and he's still making it about himself. She'd rather be dead than remain possessed. And his solution is to continue punishing her, because he's just dating a body, not a soul. The real soul of Nikki is trapped while he's essentially making love to a robot. He later meets Sarah at the park in the middle of the night, and she reveals that Nikki and Ian have been secretly hooking up for the last 2 years. And that devastates Bear. Now he's finally realizing how fake their relationship really is. And then Sarah confesses the feeling she's been hiding this entire time. But then out of nowhere, Nikki shows up and smashes Sarah's head into a brick until practically nothing is left, then forces Bear to help dispose the body, Covered in Sarah's blood, he goes back to the crystal shop to buy another One Wish Willow, and there's another clerk there, but he's just as detached and sarcastic as the other one, basically ignoring the fact he's drenched in blood and losing his mind. What's wrong with the people that work there? Complete idiots. Bear buys another One Wish Willow, but it only works that one time, hence the name of the damn thing. He needs Ian to make a wish that Nikki will stop loving him, but Ian thinks it's a joke and wishes for $1 billion instead. And somehow money literally falls from the sky. And honestly, this is my least favorite part of the movie. It feels like the script suddenly swerves into a cheap joke in the middle of an otherwise genuinely disturbing story. But fuck it, we're going with it. Bear gets home and finds Sarah's dead body in the living room, while Nikki's gone completely batshit, screaming, "Why can't you love me?" She keeps abusing herself just to force his attention back onto her. She's got Sarah's tattoos drawn on her body, thinking that will make Bear like her more. But under duress, Bear's forced to declare his love for Nikki, and he finally realizes the only way out of this nightmare is to kill himself, not even to set her free. For the fact that she inconvenienced him, he doesn't want to live anymore. At first he puts the gun in his mouth, but doesn't have the balls to pull the trigger, so instead, he decides to go out the same way his cat did, swallowing a bottle of oxys. But while he's dying, Nikki uses the One Wish Willow that he bought and wishes for him to love her forever. And instantly, Bear becomes completely obsessed with her. But as he dies, the spell finally breaks, so Nikki wakes up in a house filled with dead bodies, completely horrified and confused. Her face is all mutilated, her beauty's destroyed, and she has a lot of explaining to do to the police. And honestly, I don't see her getting out of this one. Might as well end it too. And the movie ends with her screaming over and over again, while every single person's life is ruined because Bear was too weak to simply tell Nikki he liked her when he had the chance. So let that be a lesson to every young guy terrified to express himself. Either shit or get off the pot, or end up like Bear. But I love this movie. And the plot of this movie is nothing special. It's very derivative of shows like Tales from the Crypt. We've seen this happen a million times before. However, the intensity and the visceral reactions you get from this movie are very real, and they hit the nail on the head. It reminds me of how Gaspar Noé movies are, where you feel like complete shit by the end of them. So for that alone, this movie was very effective. But this movie's more like a playlist of all these classic movies and TV shows from the past. They hit all the high notes. Every single cliche you can think of is in there. But even though the plot is extremely derivative, the beauty in this movie lies in the performances. This chick oversold her performance with just her eye contact. They picked the perfect girl for this. She has this weird balance of sexuality yet innocence, but an intensity in her eyes that's like Al Pacino's, where you can see her pain. So she absolutely nailed that. But a lot of this could have been avoided if the protagonist Bear would have had a little bit of backbone. He just lets everyone make the first moves, he doesn't speak up for himself, and his lack of initiative is what got him in this situation to begin with. He had an opportunity to get with her in the beginning of the movie when she straight up confronts him and says, "Do you like me?" And he overthinks it. He's like, "Well, it's friends." Where he had his moment. If he would have had some balls and looked her straight in the eye and said, "Yes, Nikki, I do like you," they could have had something going here. He fumble fucks around, doesn't know how to ask a girl out, so instead he depends on this voodoo fucking toy that ends up completely ruining his life. If this guy would have had a little bit of balls, he would have gotten everything he wanted. And also, his posture. He's got his slouched posture, like he accepts defeat before he even tries. A little bit of confidence would have done this kid wonders. And maybe it's a sign of the times with the generation today. Kids these days were raised with phones in front of their faces, and they don't know how to interact with people. But back in the day, we used to actually have to talk to people, and that developed a little bit of game. And I think this movie is showing just how emasculated the modern man has become. I don't know if that's what they were going for, but that's what they show with this kid Bear. And it's like we're living in a world where the girl's got to make the first move. And that's just not how it is in the real world. And these kids growing up today need to know it's really not that big of a deal. Girls are people too. You just talk to them like people. And eventually you might find the one you like, be a little charming, make her laugh, be chill. And I'm no fucking expert here. I'm no hookup artist, I'm none of the above. Listen, I told you I've been divorced twice. I could tell you how to get the girl, But when it comes to keeping her, I'm lost there. You're gonna have to figure that one out on your own. And Bear overthinks it. He reenacts how he's gonna ask her out to some waitress, and he's saying way too many words. Keep it simple, stupid. Less is more. You don't want to overshare how you feel about a person all at once. If you like someone, let them know in bits and pieces, but keep it cool. And if he did that, he'd probably still be alive. But Bear's whole purpose of the movie was to set up the performance of Nikki. She stole the damn show in this movie. She was the show. This chick, Inde Navarrete, there's big things on the horizon for her because she can act her ass off. So I'm excited to see what she's going to be in next. But all in all, this movie was decent. It was really hard to watch, honestly. It was like being tortured in a movie theater for 90 minutes. I was at the edge of my seat, scared to death, thinking to myself, damn, I don't ever want to do this again. But for the generations today that have never watched the old Tales from the Crypt or even seen The Exorcist, this is going to be new and fresh to them. But for people like me, I've seen this shit a million times before. And I've seen it in real life. Not to this extent. But yeah, tell me your thoughts on the movie. Tell me what you think. Did you think this movie sucked or did you think it was great? But to the rest of you, I hope you have a good night. Be safe. Be careful what you wish for. And God bless.